Hi, this is Trev and welcome to my blog. Welcome to another episode of Tips and Tricks. It's blinking freezing. Anyway, I thought I'd give a lead loading tutorial a crack, as a few people have requested it, most namely my buddy Andrew Thomas. Andrew, thank you very much for your help over the last few years. So this is a tutorial for yourself and for those who requested it. So lead loading, or soft soldering as it's sometimes referred to as, is a bit of a throwback to the past. Traditionally car bodies were made, they were put together, spot welded, welded or brazed across the joints, and then they put lead across afterwards to make it into a continuation, so that one panel flowed into the other and you couldn't see the joints. It was then of course adopted by the crash repair trade before fillers were about to use as a filler, and also to aid repair for rust repairs. I'm sure it was used in plenty of cars to bodge them up. If you had a hole in it, you could probably bridge the hole with lead and file it away, and then of course it sort of acted a little bit like how people use or used to use fiberglass paste. Not so much anymore, because modern vehicles just don't rust like they used to. So I still think it has its place in the repair trade, certainly in the classic car repair trade, because it's so useful for sealing things up. There are a few considerations when using it, i.e. It gets everything very hot, so anything you would have put on the inside of the panel to seal it up, to seal it or primer it, of course is all going to get burnt off. I'll talk about these considerations more at the end of the video. So here we are, I've got this old van that I'm restoring, and classic case with me. It's sort of borderline, shall I cut the bottom of the door off and replace the whole lower section of the door, which I could have done right across there, and perhaps I should have done this because the door was so badly damaged anyway. But the bottom of the door looks so solid, and it is quite solid. Have unearthed a bit of rot in this corner which I've welded up, and it's going to take me a couple of days to make a bottom of the door up properly and weld it in, because you've got these funny edges coming down. If I was just to weld it into that corner there, you know damn well you're going to have rust all erupting along this corner at some stage. That's where it's going to fail, or fail along the back edge. The other issue I've got with this door as well is it's enclosed. So it's completely enclosed. There's a solid skin all the way on the inside of the panel as well as the outside. I've got these drain holes which I can use as a good access point to spray lots of wax oil in when I'm finished. So if you've come to the decision that you actually want to use lead to seal up a welded area, so you've welded a little patch panel in and it was quite rusty and the metal's thinning around it, and you've welded it in, you know there's going to be a few pinholes in it, and you can get to it from behind with a wax oil gun, and you've decided that you want to seal it up with some lead, and you haven't primed it, then what you can do is go ahead and do that. One consideration you really should think about doing is making that repair area a little bit lower than the actual outer profile that the panel is going to be at the end. Because if you so say you've welded your patch panel in and you've got it absolutely perfect, there's nowhere for the lead to go. The lead's just going to sit on the outside and you're going to file a whole lot off. And what you really want to end up is, you want to end up with a nice little layer of lead, sort of a millimetre or perhaps a bit more, a couple of millimetres of lead over the area, which will ensure that it's sealed up that entire area. So you may need to tap in the repair area, or if you're welding it in, then very often of course the welder creates shrinkage that you can then utilise the shrunk area to fill with lead. So that's something else that's quite an important tip that you need to think about when you're doing it. Don't, you know, if you are going to use lead, you don't want a perfect flat panel. You need it to be slightly lower where your leaded area is going to be. So this is the kit we're going to need. We've got some lead paint. Please take note. All this stuff, very, very toxic lead. Never ever sand it. Never sand lead. Certainly not so that you're going to get it into the atmosphere. So there's our lead paint, which is powdered lead and flux mixed together. And we've got our stick of lead. Body files. So I've got my adjustable body file and a little tip. Mr. Luigi, an Italian panel beater I used to work with, unfortunately passed away now. He showed me this great tip because he used to use lead for everything. Just get a body file, heat it up with an oxygen acetylene torch, and then you can bend it into that shape. This is far more useful than you would believe for shaping lead. So that's a little tip for you, you probably won't have seen before. And then to pat the lead into shape while it's still molten, we've got a maple paddle. And then what we use to stop the lead from sticking and burning the paddle is a product called tallow. This is tallow, and it's used mainly in the electrical industry. They lubricate cables when they're pulling them through a conduit. So this lead paint, it will dry out over time, and with a few spots of water you can soon make it quite liquid again. So with a suitable brush, brush the area that you want tinned, and make sure that you go past the area that you intend to apply lead to, because if you're not entirely covered, then the lead won't stick. Okay, that should do. Okay, so with a decent blow lamp or oxygen acetylene torch like I'm using here, a bit more heat with that. Should be able to already see it turning, see the lead melting out of it. You can see like little beads forming quite quickly. So I'm going to just take the moisture out of the flux first. It will fizz a bit where there's a bit of moisture in it. That's it. So I'm going to warm that area. Flux is pretty corrosive, so we want to get enough heat into it to activate all the flux to sort of burn it off really. Well, we're seeing it turning now. So I've just got a piece of tissue here, clean piece of tissue, and what we're going to do is just wipe it down, clean it, like so. Look how clean that's come up instantly. So heat it again. There we go, it's all tinned up ready. A bit of a black area here, it could have probably done with a bit more flux. But I'm not going to worry about that too much because it's not in the leaded area. I just really want to concentrate on this corner. So we've got our stick of solder, our flame. Need to start warming things up. So what you need to do is warm the stick up, just sort of the last inch or so. Just keep applying the heat. What will happen is the lead will become what's called buttery. And we'll see what I mean in a second. We're just heating it up, we're not looking to melt anything at this stage. So you get your lead to the buttery stage. At the same time, you need to be just keeping your panel temperature up as well, so that the lead on the panel is still molten. So we get our lead to the buttery stage, and then we ditch a piece of lead in like that. We've got lead on the surface. Don't worry about what it looks like at this stage. It looks absolutely horrific, I know. So we'll get it to the buttery stage again. Yeah, it's just starting to fold under its own weight. Heat the panel a little bit. It's so easy to go over the top with this and end up with it all on the floor. We'll just leave it like that. That's more than enough in that area, I would have said. Try and get some on the vertical here. See if I can get it to stick in nicely. Right. There we go, perfect. That's the sort of result you want. Perfect. So, next stage, maple puddle, tallow. Whatever you do, don't get too much tallow on the go. You really want enough just to sort of lightly dampen the end. The problem with having too much tallow on the block is that the tallow will mix in with the lead, and you'll end up with little channels of tallow through the lead, which can go back to the steel, and then if things start rusting underneath, it'll creep up through those channels. You need to warm things up again on the panel, and then basically you pat it into shape. So this is what I've ended up with. I know it doesn't look like a masterpiece. What we need to do is we're applying the filler like we would a polyester filler. So we've put it in as good as we possibly can using the paddle, but without going over the top, because what we're going to do next is file the lead off anyway. But you want to get it quite accurate so that you haven't used too much lead, or you haven't, you know, put enough in, because you only really get one hit at this as far as I'm concerned, because as soon as you start filing it, you're going to start finding steel quite quickly, i.e. the panel underneath. Any high spots are going to come up, and as soon as you go over that with a file, you're going to remove any of the tinned steel, which means that you cannot then reapply the lead because it's not tinned anymore. You've got to start heating things up and reapplying the lead paste, and that doesn't ever really work. So we've taken it as far as I want to go anyway. You can see I've got the basic shape of the panel back again. Looks a bit rough down here. What I've tried to do is I've tried to lead in that skin with the other skin underneath, sort of merge the two in together, so it's sealed that seam as well. I'm going to seal it all along anyway with some polyurethane after I've primed it, so not that important, but do what I can. So the next stage is to file this back into some kind of shape. So I use my Mr. Luigi file. Nice thing about this is you can flip it over the other way, and something you're doing like this, you pull the file towards you, so you've got that facility as well as a traditional filing like that. And that's why it works so well, this sort of reverse curved type of thing. All filed nicely back to shape. Quite pleased with the results. Could always be better, but with the processes I'm going to do next, i.e. I'm going to epoxy prime the whole panel, and then it will be filled anyway with a glazing putty, which I'll probably do a bit of a promotion on at some stage. This sharp edge here, I've just blunted it off. So if you've got any sharp edges, leave those till last. Always leave your sharp edges in, even if they're quite rounded. That's another tip. And what that does is it ensures the correct profile of the panel that's going up to it. If you've got a straight sharp edge that's nice and crisp, and you leave it right to the end like that, it will ensure that the panels leading up to it are indeed true and flat and going in the right direction. So that's another tip that a lot of people overlook. They try and start putting this shape in straight away. Always leave your edges to last. Something else you can use, which is quite useful for lead work, is a safe edge razor blade, and you can use this for blending your edges. and it scrapes off any old lead paint and the flux and stuff like that that's still in there. The other thing I found really useful is an old wood chisel. Sharpen up a wood chisel, you can actually carve the lead out really well. So at this stage now, what I will do now is, this is good enough, I'm happy with this for what I'm doing, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a Scotch Brite red pad, which I should have in my hand and I haven't, and miraculously one appears. Yeah, red pad, something like this, or I mean that's different brand, it's a bit more worn out, that one. So I'm going to get something like this. You could use an old Brillo pad or wire wool or something like that, and put a bit of washing out liquid on it, get it wet, don't do this dry, and really give it a good clean, and then that will ensure that you've got rid of any residue, tallow or flux or lead paint or whatever that's going to be left on the surface that's going to cause a corrosion issue or a paint issue at a later stage. So yeah, lead loading, very useful product to use. I think you really do need to make some careful considerations before deciding to use lead for use as a lead filler or to seal a panel up. And it's kind of like what I was hinting at the start of the video. You really need to think about what you're going to put behind it, i.e. if you know something's going to be lead loaded in that area, say it's a couple of new panel sections you're welded in and traditionally it would have been lead filled, then you're going to want to lead fill it again to keep things right as they should be. Then you may want to make the consideration of not primering it beforehand, and if you can actually gain access to the rear of the panel, because this is where all the issues start, because cars really do rust from the inside out. And other considerations you need to make when you're thinking about using this kind of product or when you're doing a restoration, because there's so many variables that you know, everybody wants a kind of one-stop solution for all eventualities, and that isn't the case, because you could have a restoration that could take a couple of years to do, or a couple of days later it could be in the paint shop. And if you've got this difference in time, then your approach is going to be very much different, because if something's going to be exposed to a cold environment, a cold atmosphere for 2 years, then you really need to be making some kind of reservations for some kind of rust protection on the internal parts of the vehicle, on the insides of the panels, because if it's in an unheated workshop and it's going to be left there for a long time, then it's going to be open to getting very cold and very damp, and things are going to start going rusty quite quickly. Whereas, you know, if you know you're going to have the thing painted in a couple of days, you've just got a small repair on one panel, a couple of days later it's going to be in the paint shop, then you haven't got to be quite so worried about what's going on inside, because you know that, well, you know, a couple of days later we're going to be flashing the wax or going around in there, not a problem. Whereas something that's going to be longer term, then, you know, you may need to think about maybe priming it in advance or sealing it up in advance or something like that. I think you get what I'm saying anyway. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. If you've got any requests, like I say, thanks very much for your comments and emails, and any more requests, just feel free to ask. If you're unsure about anything, a lot gets lost in translation with these videos, I realise that. I do my best to try and keep things straightforward and basic, and then I can build in more complex things in the future. I've got some more videos coming up that I've already kind of shot, so we're going to do my compressor dryer, some door skin repairs, a few other fixes as well. I have been requested to do a lot of kind of how I shape panels, how I make panels. Quite a few people have asked me about that, and I'm actually going to be making up like a hammer formed panel at some stage in the next couple of months. So I'm kind of saving myself for that, because I could do a live demonstration on my panel that I'm going to make, where I hammer form panels over hardwood plywood, Very useful technique to learn about. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video, which will be the compressor dryer, and the hammer forming one will probably come in a couple of months' time. Okay, so catch you in the next video. Bye for now.